A green car, but not a car. A tree, perfectly sculpted into one, parked forever in an English garden. No engine, no wheels, just leaves, memory, and a sailor's heartbreak. And that's just number 10. In this video, you'll discover 10 extraordinary British backyards, each transformed into something unforgettable by the hands of everyday people, miners, gardeners, war veterans, even a retired tram inspector. They didn't have money, they didn't have training. What they had was time, imagination, and something to prove. In the quiet village of Glasshouse, Gloucestershire, a remarkable sight captures the attention of passers-by. A meticulously sculpted yew tree in the shape of a vintage car, complete with defined wheels, windows, and a roofline. This living sculpture stands as a testament to creativity and resilience. The origins of this topiary trace back to the post-World War II era. A Norwegian sailor, stranded in England due to wartime circumstances, found solace in shaping the yew tree into a car. This act was not merely horticultural, but deeply symbolic, representing a journey interrupted and a longing for home. Over the years, the topiary has been lovingly maintained by local resident Walter Llewellyn. His dedication ensures that the green car remains a vibrant part of the village's landscape, blending art with nature. This unique creation is more than just a garden feature. It's a living narrative of history, emotion, and the enduring human spirit. Visitors often find themselves moved by the story it tells, a silent yet powerful reminder of the past and the beauty that can arise from unexpected circumstances. Have you ever imagined a garden where the ground sparkles with seashell mosaics and the walls shimmer with treasures from the sea? In the seaside town of Southbourne, Dorset, George Edward Howard, a retired coal miner and former sailor, brought that vision to life. Drawing from years at sea, he spent nearly 2 decades transforming his front yard into a dazzling marine wonderland, using shells collected from around the world. Every path, every surface, every corner told a story, crafted from over 1 million shells, carefully arranged into mosaics, sculptures, and shrines. Among the most striking features was a massive shell from the Philippines, large enough for a child to sit inside. But Howard's garden was more than decorative, it was a mission. He placed donation boxes among the displays and raised funds for cancer research, elderly care, and animal shelters. After his death in the mid-1980s, the garden stood as a beloved local attraction. But years later, vandalism forced the family to dismantle it. Today, the shell garden lives on in photographs and memories, a fragile, brilliant tribute to one man's devotion and imagination. What would you build if someone handed you a single sack of cement? For Bill Talbot, a retired miner from Measham in Leicestershire, the answer was unexpected. He began crafting a miniature replica of Lincoln Cathedral, entirely by hand, right in his front garden. Without formal training in architecture or sculpture, Talbot relied on photographs, postcards, and sheer determination to recreate the grandeur of Gothic spires and flying buttresses, all from cement, wire mesh, and patience. What started as a humble hobby quickly became a neighborhood curiosity. Locals walking past his modest house found themselves stunned by the intricate detail, stone-textured walls, stained glass impressions, and even miniature gargoyles, all meticulously carved with tools he made himself. More than a model, the cathedral became a symbol of transformation. A man who once carved through coal was now carving through history, honoring medieval craftsmanship with his own hands. For Talbot, it wasn't just a project, it was a quiet rebellion against time, age, and expectation. Visitors still remember it, not for its scale, but for its soul. In the shadow of industry, he built something sacred and made beauty where no one expected to find it. In the village of Borden, Hampshire, Jack Punter built an entire house with his bare hands. No contractors, no blueprint, and no permission from anyone but himself. Over 6 years during his free hours after work, he slowly assembled what would become a local legend. A cottage made from salvaged materials, cement, and determination. Jack wasn't an architect. He was a man with injuries, including a fractured skull from a wartime blast and a later motorcycle accident. Doctors advised him not to take on physical labor, but Jack had other plans. He collected over 25 tons of sand, carried in 200-pound sacks on a bicycle. He hauled 6 tons of cement up a steep hill bag by bag. He cut, stacked and shaped every stone himself, crafting walls, floors and even concrete furniture. Every piece in the house tells a story. The windows came from a demolished Victorian greenhouse. The fireplace stones were rescued from a bombed church. Even the garden ornaments, like a life-sized crocodile, were sculpted by Jack in his spare time. The house still stands as a monument to one man's refusal to be idle, a place where ingenuity triumphed over limitation, and where every wall holds proof that resilience can be built brick by brick. In Leighton, Essex, Sidney James spent 8 years building what many first mistake for a medieval castle. Stone turrets, arched windows, and crenellated walls rise above the hedges, giving the impression of a fortress pulled from a fairy tale. But behind the grand facade is something far more ordinary, a fully functional garage. James, a retired master builder, salvaged materials from across London to construct his backyard masterpiece. He used stone from the old Waterloo station, fragments from the Charing Cross Hotel, and even pieces of Bishopsgate Bank. Nothing went to waste. Every brick had a history, every beam had a second life. His wife, proud but practical, jokingly called it the most overbuilt car shelter in the country. Surrounding the garage castle is a meticulously arranged ornamental garden, featuring smaller model castles that James continued to build in his spare time. Some of the stones come from churches over 1,000 years old, adding a quiet spiritual weight to the project. It's not just eccentricity, it's devotion, a celebration of craftsmanship, memory, and the beauty of doing things the hard way. If your garage looked like this, would you ever want to park your car anywhere else? In the town of Southbourne, a garden once kept time, not with gears or glass, but with flowers that chimed every 15 minutes. René Marchand, a Swiss makeup artist who settled in England, created the only private floral clock in the country, turning his backyard into a living timepiece. Marchand engineered the mechanism himself, embedding a sound system below the clock's base. Every quarter hour, chimes rang out, soft, resonant, and synchronized with the movement of the floral hands. At night, out of courtesy to his neighbors, he muted the bells with a clever switch hidden beneath the garden bed. But this was more than a mechanical feat. The clock changed with the seasons. Marchand constantly rotated the plants, replacing each bloom as it faded, so the colors shifted like a painter's palette through spring, summer, and fall. Time passed not just in hours, but in petals, shades, and scents. The floral clock was a poetic contradiction, precise yet organic, engineered yet ever-changing. It reminded anyone who saw it that time, like beauty, is always in motion, and that even something as fleeting as a flower can measure the rhythm of life. In Bradford-on-Avon, Wiltshire, Charles Edward Palmer spent his retirement bringing childhood memories to life, not with fabric and thread, but with wire frames and cement. A former tram inspector, Palmer found peace in a most unusual hobby: sculpting teddy bears, not to cuddle, but to endure. Each bear was moulded by hand, cast in cement, and painted in soft, muted tones that gave them an almost storybook charm. Over the course of 2 years, he created more than 60 bears, each with a distinct pose, expression, and personality. Some sat reading, others leaned on fences, and a few seemed to be caught mid-play. All of them radiated warmth despite their stone-cold frames. Palmer never sold a single bear. They lived together in his garden, arranged like a little schoolyard or picnic scene, a private universe open only to those invited in. He once said they reminded him of a time when everything seemed simpler, and you could fix things with glue and patience. His cement bears didn't just resist weather, they resisted time. They stood as quiet guardians of joy, proof that even the heaviest materials can hold the lightness of childhood. In a quiet corner of Sussex, Jeff Swift built a railway not for passengers, but for memory. His garden is home to an intricate collection of scale model trams, each one crafted with extraordinary detail and historical accuracy. They don't just sit still, they run on rails laid through flower beds and hedges, echoing the cities they once served. Swift, a retired engineer, spent more than a year building each model, replicating classic British trams from cities like Edinburgh, Sheffield and Blackpool. Every tram is handcrafted to a scale of 3.5 inches, with working lights, seats and authentic paintwork. He sourced parts from discarded appliances, recycled wood and even old pocket watches, transforming scrap into rolling tributes to a vanished era. What began as a solitary hobby became a living museum. The tracks crisscross the garden like veins, and each journey carries a story of a time when public transport was elegant, local and deeply personal. For Jeff, these aren't toys, they're a timeline, a preservation of the cities and streets that shaped his life. In a space no larger than a backyard, he's built a moving archive, powered not by electricity, but by devotion. In the village of Chipping Sodbury, Gloucestershire, a hedge stands in perfect salute, a leafy tribute to Sir Winston Churchill, sculpted with clippers and care by a retired man named Mr. Gunning. For over 14 years, Gunning has shaped his garden into a gallery of green, turning ordinary shrubs into extraordinary characters. What kind of patience does it take to turn a bush into a prime minister? For Gunning, it's not about speed, it's about rhythm, observation, and responding to how each plant grows. He doesn't force the design, he lets the tree tell him what it wants to become, guiding it gradually with shears and vision. Churchill isn't alone in the garden. Topiary boxers stand ready to spar. A squirrel perches mid-leap. Each figure is grown, not built, shaped slowly over seasons. Gunning began this hobby in retirement, carving out joy from the quiet hours of the day. His garden isn't flashy. It doesn't try to impress, but behind every branch is an unmistakable sense of care. This is British spirit made botanical, a tribute not just to history, but to the art of growing something meaningful, one trim at a time. On the windswept coast of Norfolk, Edwin Sutton turned flotsam into floral art. As a retired beach warden, he spent years collecting discarded shoes washed ashore, gathering hundreds that once belonged to strangers, lost to the tides. Where others saw garbage, Sutton saw possibility. The soil near the sea was too salty for delicate flowers. Even the hardiest blooms struggled. So Sutton adapted. He filled the shoes with cement, embedded coloured stones and painted them in vivid patterns. Each became a concrete flower bed, tough enough to withstand the salt spray, yet bright enough to liven up the harsh landscape. He planted mosaics where petals refused to grow. His creations included sandals filled with daisies, boots turned into vases, and sneakers reshaped into ornamental borders. The result was a garden where every step told a story of loss, recovery, and reinvention. For Sutton, it wasn't just gardening, it was a quiet challenge to nature's limits, an act of transformation, as practical as it was poetic. In a place where nothing was supposed to bloom, he made colour permanent, turning forgotten souls into something soulful. They weren't famous. They didn't have blueprints, sponsors, or instruction manuals. What they had was time, imagination, and a quiet refusal to do things the ordinary way. From leafy cars and singing clocks to cement bears and shoe gardens, these backyards aren't just about plants or ornaments. They're about people who saw possibility where others saw limits and chose to build something lasting, beautiful, and completely their own. What do you think? Which of these backyard wonders surprised you the most? And if you could build anything in your garden, what would it be? Tell us in the comments. We read every one. And if you enjoyed this journey, give the video a like and leave a comment to help more people discover these incredible stories. It really does help the YouTube algorithm know this is something worth sharing. Sometimes the most extraordinary places aren't miles away. They're just behind someone's fence.